We are back with another episode of the Talk About It podcast. I'm Lauren Fulmer.
I'm Victor Dantas.
And today we got the opportunity to sit down with Jason Robbins today. Jason, how are you doing, man?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Very busy. You are a busy entrepreneur with your hands in many things. Your father, one of our sponsors of the show with Quality Roofing
sponsor.
Pro. Yeah, so thank you for that. We have appreciated that as well, but we're excited to have you in today and just be able to kind of pick your brain on a wide variety of topics and things like that and have some fun.
I like fun.
Yeah. Well, why don't you give us a little introduction? Who's Jason Robbins?
Yeah, so I would classify myself as a serial entrepreneur. So I love business. I see it as a game. How fast can we build a business? How well can we put in the processes and procedures to make it successful? Finding talented help to come on board and help build something that's not non-existent before we start I find it a lot of fun and challenging. And that's what gets me excited to go to work in the morning is just what problems can we solve today? What problems can we look at and say, hey, these are opportunities to make things better and build upon what we've already started building.
Did you already read my diary?
No.
Or like my note? Like I'm just kidding, but that's what I totally love. And I went to school to get my degree in business for that, all of those very, very same reasons. I mean, I enjoy the being able to figure it out, the puzzle. And you mentioned keywords that I like to use as problems or opportunities. So yeah, I mean, you just hit on a lot of that stuff, but it's a mindset that I think some people get stressed out and shut down, and some people say, man, let's go. So that's a good thing.
When we talk about mindset, a lot of people say, oh, that's cliche. But at the end of the day, that's one of the most important things. To have that type of mindset in the beginning, who was your influence? Who helped you change your mindset early? Because you started early, right?
Yeah, definitely. I would say my dad and probably my older brother both had an influence in the way that I see things, the way that I, want to be involved with business. My dad owned a construction company. He owned a bait business. The bait business was interesting. He would go up north and buy minnows or leeches, and we had in our garage leech tanks and minnow tanks, and he would go around and deliver those to all these different places. And that was a business that he started from scratch and then later on sold it. So I was as I grew up, I got to witness some of that. I also got to witness, if you own a business and you're the sole worker, or you don't have a lot of employees, then you're not getting paid when you're not working. And so I also got to witness that. And so any business I've been involved in, I don't want to start or buy a job. I want to start or buy an investment. And with that being said, I'm constantly trying to work myself out of a job. Any position that I'm in, I look at that as 3 months to a year, and I'm looking to make it better and hire somebody to do it.
Whoa, that's interesting. So every business that you started, you thought about you starting and doing all the operational stuff, but your mind was always, how can you train someone as fast as I can to be able to do what I'm doing?
Definitely.
Is that always the mindset?
Yep. Always.
Since the beginning? Since the very first business you started?
No. I would say the very beginning with the pallet business, no. That mind shift would have happened along the way. So we started a pallet business about 27 years ago, and that mind shift would have happened probably around 20 years ago.
Okay. But before the pallet business, I know you did a lot of stuff before that. How did you start when you were in high school, for example?
So in high school.
In what industry? Because I know there's real estate involved.
I remember buying it was the penny saver. So the penny saver would come out once a week and go to even the people that live in the country would get the penny saver. Everybody got the penny saver. And in that, there was a lot of scams and, a lot of things you had to read and figure out, is this a good deal or a bad deal? And one of those things that I read said, if you pay us like $100, I can't remember the dollar amount, we'll send you a list of auctions that happen that the U.S. government seizes vehicles and auctions off, and you can buy them for pennies on the dollar. And so I bought that, and everybody I told about made fun of me. Everybody. I don't know one person that was like, oh, that's a great idea. Everybody thought I was an idiot. And I start reading this, and I'm realizing, okay, so there's NADA auctions that federal government, they actually own the vehicles, and they're office workers, and then they auction off the vehicles when they're done with them after they hit 3 years or 60,000 miles. And so I start going to some auctions, Chicago, Quad Cities, Milwaukee. And the first few auctions, I didn't buy anything. I just went to learn. Then I went to the bank. I'm 17 years old. And I said, hey, I want to go buy a vehicle for $10,000 and I'm going to sell it. Will you give me a loan? And they looked at me and I thought surely they'd say no. And they gave it to me and without a cosigner. So Whoa. Yeah, I still remember that guy. So I went to an auction, bought it, 3-month note, no payments, is just a balloon payment after 3 months. And that gave me the pressure to sell it. The banker actually gave me his NADA book, which would give me the value of vehicles. And I went there with the mindset, I'm going to buy the best deal. I don't care if it's a minivan or a truck or a car. I could care less. The best deal. And I walked out and bought a vehicle. And so through high school, I think I might have sold 18 vehicles. And my average was around $1,000. I think the most I ever made was $2,700. And I remember that day I made $2,700 and I walked into Pizza Hut. That's where I worked for my brother. And I said, I'm done. I just figured out how I could make a lot of money. And that's his response. He kind of laughed at me. And within about a week, I was back in there asking for my job back.
Yeah.
Well, I realized I couldn't make $2,700
every day.
Exactly.
Right.
It wasn't luck, but it wasn't going to happen as often as I would have liked it to.
For sure.
A lot of people would like to learn how to use leverage, basically how to approach a bank. At that time, for example, no credit, no money. How do you approach a bank and ask them for a loan to buy a car?
I didn't even know anybody there. So I just walked in and said, this is what I want to do. And I think if you have the right confidence, you have the right, you've already done your research, you know what you're wanting to accomplish, you know how you're going to accomplish it, people get on board for that. Mm-hmm. There was 3 individuals. One of them was the guy that cut my hair. And then 2 other people that I just knew in the community that I approached about real estate after I got into it. And I said, hey, man, if I could borrow $25,000 from you, it would be, really appreciated because I could do this, and this in the real estate. And I had 3 people. I never had anybody turn me down. I had 3 people owe me $25,000 when I first got started, probably 2 years into it, so that I could buy more properties and grow faster.
Who taught you that? You learned? No YouTube. There was no YouTube.
No YouTube. So the first 2 houses I bought, I was a senior in high school, and I was looking for the best deal. I was going to get married right out of high school. I needed to find a place. Everything we looked at was crap. It needed to be tore down for the money that I could spend. And finally, I came across 2 properties that a lady out of Macomb was selling. She had inherited them and she rented them out and she had been stung by the renters twice, and they were destroyed. And she was just frustrated. She was like, I'm just going to sell them. And so I ended up buying those for $17,750, the 2 of them, back in 1997. And we started renovating both of them at the same time. And I had a teacher of mine in high school approach me and say, hey, I'm interested in buying one of those. And so I sold it to him on contract. And that's how I got started. As soon as I did that, I thought, I'm going to find another one and sell it on contract.
But even selling on contract, that's an idea that an 18-year-old or 20-year-old kid would not. How did someone learn? Did you learn from someone?
I believe that the teacher that approached me about buying that property had some financial difficulties. Okay. And I believe that he is the first person. He approached me with the concept of, hey, what if I bought it on contract? Okay. I gave you X amount down. I'll give you this much in interest. And later on, I looked at that and said, man, how many of these credit, I'm going to call it a credit card, a house on contract that's, earning me interest instead of me paying out interest. And I thought, how many of these could I do? And I started calculating stuff and figuring out things. And I was like, man, I could make $30,000 in interest off of this if I did this and this and this. And I built that to eventually I had 67 houses, all residential, no duplexes, making over $100,000 in just the interest.
Whoa.
See, and like one thing, I was a banker for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years.
Seriously?
Yeah. And it used to crack me up, the amount of people that will come to your office and sit down, and all they have is this idea. They haven't done any numbers. They haven't put together any sort of plan. And that's what I'm telling you. If you're going to convince somebody, especially a bank or an investor, I mean, you got to have these ducks in a row and be able to paint this pretty accurate picture about what you're going to do, instead of just this idea that you've got between your ears that you've, laid around in bed at night and pictured and vision. You got to have something to be able to get somebody on board, whether it's investors, a bank, friends, whatever. But it's going to be awfully difficult to convince somebody to step up and put financial, monetary investment into you without them like really, really feeling comfortable about it.
Definitely.
Do you think that it's harder in the beginning or harder to scale the real estate business?
They're both different mindsets. So you have the mindset of you have the mindset of business or creating a job or creating a company that's going to employ people. And that's a totally different mindset than, is this scalable? And how big could this be built to? And those are totally different questions to ask. So when you're looking at getting involved into a business or starting a business or buying a business, I feel like that's almost like the second question behind the first. The first might be, how much can I make? Who's going to be my customers? How am I going to market to them? And then that scalability comes later. But I would challenge people to look at that as all in one, so that you don't get locked into a business that you can't take to the next level.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. What about after? I mean, you did real estate for a long time, right?
Yeah, still in real estate.
Yeah.
Just actually, we're closing on a house tomorrow that we're selling that we flipped in Kirkwood. So yeah, still helping my kids actually do it.
How is it different from now to back then? What type of real estate you deal now, and what type of real estate you started doing? I mean, you talked about single families, but
yeah. So there for a period of time, there was a lot of repos. I bought a lot of distressed properties. Banks had foreclosed on them or getting close to foreclosing. And that's where I bought a lot of properties, some sight unseen. Those properties, a lot of times, all the water lines had froze. They hadn't been winterized in a timely fashion. They'd been empty for 2 years. Maybe raccoons in there trashing it. Just, really bad properties. But the reason why I started there was because I had no money. I had that was a great place to cut my teeth and learn and do it where my mistakes might, cost me a few $100s or a few $1,000s and not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it was a great lessons for me.
Mm-hmm. So many people, we've talked about this, and even other guests on the podcast who have ventured in this, but so many people, what I find, having talked with, just out and about with friends and family, I think so many people are very interested or even inspired to get in real estate, and but then the timing's never perfect, or the fear of, messing up and then having a financial cost tied to that, setting you back. But you got to jump somewhere. You're going to make mistakes along the way. It's just like anything. But I mean, if you don't try and you just keep sitting there, the cost of missed opportunity will far outweigh whatever that 1 or 2 losses, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing to consider is, what do you know and what are you good at? So I had some background in construction before I got started, which gave me the confidence to tackle some of those difficult projects. But I do think that there's some people that they don't have any knowledge in construction. Could they still do well in real estate? Possibly. But I do think knowing what you're getting into or learning about it, so that you can avoid some of those costly mistakes. I've encouraged probably 4 or 5 other people that I know of to get into the real estate like I was doing. And with several of those people, it wasn't good. They were not willing to hire out the work. They wanted to do it themselves on all of it. And the properties would sit empty for several years. Well, you're paying taxes and utilities and you've got lost revenue. That's costly. So you might be thinking, oh, I'm saving a few bucks here by doing it myself, but you're losing thousands on the other end by not getting it done fast and getting somebody in there paying. And so it really, again, it goes back to like a mindset on what are you trying to accomplish? Passive income, I hear that a lot. It doesn't really exist. There's always problems. There's always headaches. There's always things to work through. But if you can see those as opportunities and figure out ways to make it better and improve upon your system and on your product, then success is around the corner.
Yeah. When you say passive income, it reminds me of a lot of the people they want, to do this stuff. And then, they're using that short-term money that they just got. Now they're down in New Orleans or, going on a cruise, and then, I mean, you are just literally one AC going out, one furnace, it's
be
just
out of
like,
business.
yeah, I don't understand that, but so many people, and to each their own, I'm not one to like sit back and judge, but I will just, sometimes I find myself going, man, I've been doing this for a little over 5 years, and I haven't touched a dollar. And that sounds great, but also, sometimes it's like emotionally and mentally draining. You're like, dude, what am I doing all this for? I don't feel it. I don't see it. And I think that's a good thing, down the road. But right now, like, man, you can get on Facebook and see, so-and-so is on their 10th trip, and you're like, man, I can go to Nebraska next month, or Iowa,
But for you, what is the main thing that a person needs to learn to succeed in real estate? And what's the main thing that would make them go down quick in real estate?
Man, that's a tough question.
I know there might be different things, but maybe pointing the...
Yeah, I feel like the neighborhood that you're looking to buy in is critical. That'd be the first thing that I would look at. A backup plan. What's going to happen if this doesn't work out the way you think? I've always had backup plans in what I'm doing. So if I'm buying a house thinking I'm going to rent it out, or thinking I'm going to sell it on contract, or thinking I'm going to flip it, I think to myself, if this does not go as planned, what am I going to do with my property? And I already have that answered before I get into it, where a lot of people aren't ready for that. So I think being prepared for things to go in a way that they weren't planning on, but knowing how they're going to respond, so they're not having to make those decisions in a very time sensitive environment and an emotional environment. When things go south and they're going to lose money, or it's just not going as planned, they're not creative at that point in time. When you're in the grind, it's hard to be creative. If you can step back out of it and look at it from the outside, now all of a sudden you can get very creative. And that's another reason why, when I told you earlier, I try to work myself out of a position, out of a job when I'm involved in a business. It's for that very reason. If I'm in the grind, I'm not creative. If I can get out of that position and put somebody else in it, now I've got the opportunity to look at the business and say, okay, where's the holes? What can we shore up? What can we do better? And basically, I start a new position by doing it. And then if that makes sense, hire somebody to fill that again.
Okay. After you had success in real estate, and then you started the pallet business. How was that? How was that transition? How did you start the pallet business?
Yeah, so the pallet business was started with 3 of us, my dad, my brother, and I. So we all 3 started that business 27 years ago. And we had dreams of making $100,000 a year, and we had all these great ideas. And the way it started was, there was a guy at Maytag that my dad knew, and we went over and visited with him, and he was unhappy with the gentleman, the company that was taking their recycled pallets away from Maytag. They weren't doing a very good job of that, to say the least. And so there was an opportunity there. And he said, hey, I'll give you 600,000 pallets a year if you'd go, buy equipment to haul them out. And so we started doing some research, and we're like, man, this is going to make us a ton of money, and let's do it. And, we had zero experience. And over the next 5 years, we gained a lot of experience. I've heard a guy say before he has a PhD in DUMB. And I'm like, yep, that's me. I got that too. 5 years of it.
Right.
And for 5 years, I would have walked away from that at any time I could have. And, it turned out to be a really good foundation, a lot of hours, a lot of learning. And, we would not have been able to start Robbins Resource without that knowledge. And, eventually we never did make a lot of money in that business, but eventually, we ended up with semis and trailers and a building all paid for. At one point in time in that business, we were completely debt free. And, so we were able to build something there. It just took a lot of time. And in that industry, that's the other thing that I would encourage people to look at if they're thinking about getting involved in business or real estate is what's that industry, typically what is it net? You can look up right now if heating and cooling industry, bottom line's 30%, or, you look up pallet industry, bottom line's 8%. Where that number's higher, there's going to be less work involved to make more money. Mm-hmm. And so like for me, my last business venture, I looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to get into an industry that's making some of the higher nets out of the industries. And that's where I'm going to start a business.
Mm-hmm. So you chose the industry first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about mentors? Okay, for the pallet, for example, you always touch on the educational part, like that you need to learn and understand the industry. Where do you find that type of education, that type of information? Because nowadays it's way easier. The kids that were born like 15 years ago with YouTube and Google has a way bigger like competitive advantage compared to people that were born in the 19 something. So how do you learn? Did you have a mentor, for example, for a business mentor, or?
Yeah. So I mean, definitely everybody's got mentors, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
In my case, I would say, from reading a lot of books, from wanting to learn. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to research that out. And if it doesn't make sense, I'm not going to stop with the first answer. I remember I had 3 accountants that were all hired by different entities that I was involved in. And I called all 3 of them with the same question, and I got all 3 different answers. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, those 3 are all certified CPAs, and they all gave me a different answer on this one question.
Yeah.
What is the right answer? Mm-hmm. Well, I want to find out, so the drive to learn, the drive to understand, to me, that's very valuable. And then just having grit, like thinking about what you just said. I think you're right. I think that there's a lot at our fingertips right now with YouTube and with social media, and you can learn a lot of things. But what we don't have right now are people that will do whatever it takes to get it done.
Yeah.
What we don't have right now are people that are willing to wake up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and not stop working until 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. We've got people that want to work part-time, and we want to make as much as possible and have as much freedom as we can possibly have. And so I'm looking at some of these industries right now, the trades industries, and I'm saying, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
People don't want to work.
Another reason, another thing that I look at thinking about, okay, in a decade from now, where are these industries going to be, and what are those profit margins going to be at, because there's not the workers involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that I've noticed, so many people, they do want, they want the paycheck without the work, and one of I even just look back at my own personal experience is when, we, at least my era and yours, we were told, just, go to school, go to college, you get this great job, you make all this really good money, and life is great, and I get out of college, And I think the first job I get offered is like $35,000 a year. And I'm like, this is crap. You know, I thought I was supposed to have this like, you know, you have this like mindset or expectation that things are going to be somewhat handed to you. You know, I mean, you did all this work. College was super easy, by the way. That is not, I don't care what anyone says. Going through college is not like, oh man, I put in this grind. I worked really hard for this. College is a joke. That's my opinion. And I'm not even like the smartest kid in school. That is a joke.
It's not that hard.
But to me, college will show you that you're willing to work for a period of time with no immediate reward. You're not getting a paycheck. Yeah, just showing you showed a level of commitment for 4 years. You are willing to work or apply yourself and get this done. That's what a college education shows me. If I'm hiring or firing, you know, I don't put this big, you know, you got to have this college degree. It doesn't really mean much to me, and I have one. So I'm not, it just doesn't, that alone doesn't impress me much, you know.
You're talking about college reminds me my first years in the United States when I was going to college. And I mean, Jason was I would say number one person that helped me the most in the United States. And I remember like second, third year in college, I was telling Jason like, I just want to graduate and get a high paying job. And then Jason used to tell me, what's going to give you a high paying job is your skills, is what you know.
Right.
The college, the certificate will not give you the job.
No.
And I used to be like, no, my major is the best one.
Yeah.
I know I'll find a good job.
Yeah.
By the fourth year in college, I had already my soccer academy. I started doing real estate and then other stuff. I completely forgot even my resume, for example.
Yeah. Do you?
It's been years I don't worry about resume.
What'd you get your college degree in?
In logistics, supply chain management.
Right. And you use that every day now, huh? No. That's what I mean. But like, and that's for me, when I did go to college, I chose business administration because it was very broad. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew at some point I wanted to work for myself. So just being able to take, you know, accounting, finance, management, marketing classes was just kind of, you know, and I didn't specialize in any one of those areas, but I knew at some point I did want to work for myself. So I just wanted to be able to have that, you know, those tools to support that.
To me, there's no comparison. You like from one side, you stay 4 years in your school learning business management with a teacher versus staying 6 months with someone that's actually managing a business.
Yeah.
In 6 months, you learn like way more.
Yeah.
Way more.
Well, it's just real life experiences. At the end of the day, you know, it's like, you know, you could sit at home with your mom and dad every day and they can tell you what it's like out here in the streets. But if you never really get out there, you know, you're not going to ever pick that. I mean, you're not going to have a good idea.
That's true, but that's why it's important to start with some small things. You know, get some successes under your belt, builds confidence.
Big time.
You know, and then if you make those mistakes, which you will make, at least they're smaller.
Yeah. Right.
And so starting small, you know, I was scared to death to get involved with commercial real estate, but I wanted to. You know, I can remember after being involved in the residential for maybe 10 or 12 years, I'm like, man, I want to do a big one. And then I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but if I lose, if I mess up, it's a big mistake.
Right.
And, you know, the first larger property that we bought that was commercial, we actually bought with the mindset that we're going to be able to use more than half of this building. So like we already were leasing some space. We were going to, walk away from that lease once that term ended up and then move into our new building. And so that gave us the confidence and the ability to take that leap that I wished I would have taken a little sooner.
What about raising money for that type of deal? Like distribution center, commercials, those things are expensive. Even if you're using leverage, it's still hard even to put 20% of a, $3 million building, $2 million. How do you approach investors to go in with you on that?
Another reason to start small. So, you know, if you can start smaller and work your way up, we all want things fast and we want to build wealth as fast as possible, which isn't a bad thing, but there's a learning process that comes along the way. And so, you know, I don't regret not jumping into a large commercial real estate project in the very beginning, because I don't know how that would have turned out. These last 3 large commercial properties that I've been involved in have been good, but it comes from a lot of smaller successes that gives me and us, the people, the team around me, the knowledge, to know what the right questions are, to know how to navigate through, problems that come, to know what battles to pick. When the city wants you to put in a firewall and it's going to cost $70,000, do we want to just do it? Do we want to battle that? What do we want to do with that? And you don't want that to be your first property. You don't want that to be one that's got sprinkler system that's $250,000 and you're not sure if you actually need it, but you're being told you have to have it. And with a residential home, you're not going to run into those kind of issues.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and to piggyback off of him, like once we were talking about earlier too, to get investors on board at that point, to be able to say, hey, I have these 60 something properties, that I've started, and this is where I'm at now. I believe I'm ready now for this next level to take a commercial opportunity. And, would you get on board with me? That's that type of conversation I'm going to be having with an investor. Hey, look, this is what I've been able to do, and it's going really well, and I've learned a lot in these areas and this, and I believe, this next opportunity, being able to purchase this at that, here's a plan I have to do with the building. You're pitching, it's sales, you're presenting an opportunity to an investor. And if you do it right and you have it makes sense and you have your A to Z, I think any savvy investor is gonna look at it if you have it, done right, and if they're a savvy investor, they're going to be able to look at and tell you, say, hey, I like what you got here, but here's what you're missing. This, you got to be concerned with this or that, and even that, getting them to tell you no, that's half of it, right? It's almost like pitching an idea. Well, now they're telling you what I don't like, or what needs to be cleaned up in order for me to do this. I mean, that's even better than getting a no.
People that they invest in real estate, there's part of their career that they see that they have a bunch of assets that's worth something, and then they have a bunch of debt as well. Do you lean towards more paying off the debt and keeping those assets, or you would be more something where you keep leveraging, of course, your assets, and maybe your equity keeps going up little by little but acquiring more debt, or you would prefer to keep your assets and pay off the debt?
Yeah, so with debt comes risk, and that's something that's really hard to calculate. So when you're looking at real estate and you want to grow and you want to build something fast, obviously by leveraging and borrowing as much as you can on as little down as possible is going to allow you to grow at a much faster pace. I had an experience maybe 10 years ago, where I had about $500,000 that was coming due at a bank. I did everything on a 10-year amortization schedule, 5-year balloon, because it was commercial and that's what most banks do. So after 5 years, my loan to value was like 40% on these properties, and they were coming due one at a time, and it was about $500,000 between, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them. And the banker kept just putting a 30-day extension on it, 30-day extension, and that's how it accumulated to about the $500,000. And then one day I walk in there, I'm like, what are we going to do with this? We need to just, finish out another 5 years, and I've got them paid off, and we're done. And he looked at me and said, I don't know what to tell you, but the bank, they don't want the business. And I said, well, what do you mean? I've been banking here for 8 years, and we've got a great relationship, been doing a lot. My loan to value is 40%. Like, the risk is hardly anything for these guys, right? And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this situation? And the bank had gotten stung by someone else in the secondary housing market, and so they wanted their portfolio to change, and they wanted to downsize their secondary housing market. Well, I happen to be a big piece of that, and they finally told me this, and it put me into a situation where if they weren't doing these 30-day renewals extensions, then I would be late, and it would be a lot harder to find another bank if I would be late on these. So, it opened my eyes to borrowing money. There's risk. I wasn't even aware that was a possibility. Never had an experience like that. Never had heard of an experience like that. And so when I was factoring, my growth rate and borrowing money, that wasn't part of the equation. So for me, I like to get out of it as fast as I possibly can. I'm not opposed to borrowing money, but I'm definitely not going to stretch it out over 30 years or 20 years and try to make money that I'm going to spend as I'm doing it. I'm going to put it on a 5-year, a 3-year, a 10-year, and I'm going to pay it off as fast as I can and have some cash at the end. And there's, definitely multiple schools of thought here. I just think it's hard to factor that risk with that borrowed money.
Well, and it lowers your monthly obligation, back to risk. But, if you do continue to have these loans and these loan payments, that's an obligation you have every single month, so the quicker that you can get those paid off. And yeah, you could read a book that'll tell you to always have debt, and you can read a book or a podcast or a guru, it's going to tell you to never have debt. So, I mean, there's a million ways to skin the cat, as we like to say, but
in a situation like that, what did you do? Did you look for another bank?
Yeah, I ended up.
I think you have to.
Yeah,
you didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I ended up going to another bank and moving all of my rental properties that I had at that bank. And actually, I think all of my stuff was there. And at that time, I decided I'm going to get 2 banks. And so actually, right now, I have 3 banks that I work with, and so that I'm not ever caught in that spot again. Yeah. So I've built relationships with 3 different banks for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years now. I've had 3 banks.
And that only happened because there were several properties and the 5-year balloon was ending around the same time.
Yep. Yeah.
And then you needed to either refinance or they didn't want to refinance. Is that
right?
No,
right.
They
didn't want to refinance, and that was the thing. Is like, why? We've got a good relationship. I'm not late on any payments. I haven't been late on payments. 40% loan to value is a really good spot. They have very little risk. And so I was baffled by it. I'm walking out the door scratching my head thinking, what just happened? Yeah. And I did not realize that there's board meetings, involved with bankers where they sit down and they say, what do we want our portfolio to look like? Let's lower this. Let's raise this. Let's do this. And I happen to be caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, banks.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, banks will change. Just like any business, you have to adjust. As time and economy and things are changing. Mm-hmm. I remember in 2000, it was 2007, I think, or 8, but I think it was 7. I was a banker in Bloomington, Illinois, and our bank said, they just came in one day and they said, hey, no more recreation vehicle loans, no more. And if it was in the next week or 2, people were literally bringing their RVs back to the bank because it was the last thing they're gonna make a payment on. Mm-hmm. When money gets tight, and that's what happened. The economy started to kind of have a dip. People, they're gonna pay their groceries, they're gonna pay their mortgage. This RV is gonna get the last of my money, and people were literally bringing them to the bank with the keys. You guys can have it. Take it back. I'm not making another payment.
That's crazy.
Right. So you have to adjust.
How 2008 affected you?
I really didn't.
No?
I didn't have, actually, all the businesses I was involved in, I grew in 2008. There was, I didn't
real estate as well?
Yeah, real estate as well. It was actually good for me. I was buying a ton of properties.
Because it was cheaper?
I don't know what year it was. There was one year I bought 34 properties in 1 year.
It was probably 08 or 09.
Yeah, it probably was.
And that's what my business partner, we were talking a year ago, and some of it's happening or has over the last few months, but people are going to get real tight, and scared and stagnant. And that's when you got to be ready to buy.
So what actually happened in 2008 for real estate investors?
There was a lot of things that happened. Down in Florida, they're building a lot of spec homes and building houses like crazy. And instead of a actual, person buying it and moving in, it would be a businessman buying it, and then another businessman buying it from that businessman. And there'd be three transitions in property ownership. and still nobody living in the house, but the value is going up. So everybody's wanting to get in on it. And it created this, fake market. And there wasn't actually people living in a lot of these houses. So once that I know people that were down there flipping home. They would go down there, and they would spend $50,000, and then they would, pour the foundation and then once they got everything framed up, they'd put another 10% down, and they would have that property sold before it was ever built, and they would make $50,000 or $70,000 in profit on about $70,000 they invested. So they're doubling their money. And the person that would buy that property would then sell it again. And that was happening over and over. So there was definitely, that was a piece of it.
They say that was a piece. I know like in Arizona, they got hit real bad too, but there were so many people. At one point, Arizona had it was something stupid, 15,000 people a day moving, so they didn't have enough housing. And, you could buy something for 100,000 and within 3 to 6 months without doing anything to it, the demand so high, all of a sudden, people are willing to pay 140, 150 or 200. And then eventually that, when it all stops, well, now people owe 200,000 on a home that's really only 130. It came back to reality.
Oh, people were upside down there more.
And then on top, what happened was, and then now this is my banking background coming out, but a lot of people, they buy this house for 100,000. Now you're telling me it's worth 160,000. So they take out a second mortgage on the equity, buy a boat, a trailer, they get another vehicle, maybe do some landscape, whatever. They're just extending themselves.
Home equity loan.
Any of it. Or they were the ARMs, so adjustable rate mortgages were very popular at that time because I'm only going to be in the house for 3 years. We're going to be moving. We'll just do this 3-year ARM. And then the wife loses a job or they get divorced or the health condition, whatever changes. And now within that 3 years, that period comes and they go to reapply for the loan and they can't get credit approved. So because their situation changed. So now they can't even get the loan. Now they're making the interest rate goes up to
foreclosure,
a higher rate. The 3-year lock is done. Interest rate goes high. They can't afford their payments. So they just walk away from the house.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that stuff happening in 2008.
Oh, yeah, it was. I remember going to a real estate seminar up in the Chicago area, and they had all the bankers out in the foyer area. And I remember standing there and just watching some of the screens they had flashing. And one of them caught my eye. And I was looking at it. I was like, okay, so the payment that in that particular deal that was on the screen would not even cover. It would cover zero interest, and it wouldn't even cover all the principal. There's a principal and interest payment that you make every single month on a house, and this illustration that they had on the board, they only paid. That's what it was. They only paid part of the interest, zero principal. So they paid 90% of the interest, and there was 10% of the interest left. So basically, your principal was growing. Most loans in the banking world on residential are 30-year or less. And in that time frame, they had some 40-year ones, and then they had this one that I was watching, and I had to walk up and talk to the people. I'm like, so how does this work? In the Chicagoland area, they were anticipating a 10% increase in value every single year because they were looking at the last few years. And so they created these loans that were actually growing. And so exactly to your point, people ended up all kinds of crazy upside down and couldn't figure out how to get out. And so they were walking away from stuff.
So do you think smaller markets didn't got impacted like larger ones, like small towns? Or
not as bad. Not as bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, it still happened, but not as bad. Yeah. One thing I always like to point out too, because as my job at the bank, your typical consumer, and in 2008, the consumer was pointing at the bank saying the banker put me in this wrong loan. And the banker was looking at the consumer saying, you told me you wanted the smallest amount of payment, we told you about a 15 or a 30 year, and you said, no, I want the lowest interest rate or lowest payment right now. Well, that's the ARM. Mm-hmm. So, the consumer, I always say we like to drive on both sides of the road. When I go to work, you better pay me the most money, You better give me the most money or I'll go work for Victor. He'll pay me $1 more. And then when we go to the store, we're like, dude, I'm not paying that much for that. If you don't drop your price, I'm gonna go to Victor's shop. He's $1 cheaper. It's the most messed up thing, and it's Americans as a whole, I do like to believe. I don't think this is the thing that happens in our entire world. It happens really, really bad here in America. We want the most money when we go to earn, and I don't want to part with a single dollar of it when I go to the store. Yeah, it's a messed up thing. And then you wonder why, the mom and pop shops slowly started to go away. The Walmarts of the world pop up, and you can only go one place to get all this crap.
What was the interest rate at that time, 2008?
I believe it was around 8.5. I think it had gotten up to in the 8s. I remember.
Is that how you grew your portfolio with that type of interest rate, 8%,
yeah,
or it was lower?
I think the lowest I saw there in the beginning was probably maybe 6 or just under 6, and the high end I think was around 9. But I was also talking to people that were older than me. So when I first got into real estate, I found people that had been doing real estate for decades. And I said, hey, can I take you to lunch and pick your brain? And, one couple, they owned like 60 some houses, I think, and they were all debt free. And they were, I think, in their 70s. They wouldn't let me pay for their lunch, but they went to lunch with me and I got to pick their brain. And, they taught me some lessons that were, invaluable. And then another gentleman that had gone bankrupt with like 5 or 6 properties. And I picked his brain, and, I learned things that they made mistakes, things that they wish they had done different. And so I think that's very important. Find people that have already been, doing what you want to do and learn from them. Most people want to help people. Most people want to see people succeed. I'm a firm believer in that, there's plenty of opportunity out there. It's not a you win, I lose, or I win, you lose. There can be, we've got this roofing business we just started. And, I don't look at my competition and say it's either them or me. I look at it and say, there's so many people that need roofs that we can all be winners in this. And we just all have to find our lanes in order to do that well. So I think that's important to remember, like people want to help people.
Now talking about the roofing, how did that start?
Yeah. So my buddy, Jamie Schaller, him and I have worked together off and on for probably 17 years in different areas. And, he came down to Texas to see me over the winter. I was actually remodeling a funny story. I was down there and I had a problem with my foot. And I went into the doctor and they said, we need to amputate your toe. And I was like, what? Whoa. And so I walk out of there. I'm like, I got to go get a second opinion. So I go get a second opinion. Yeah, we need to amputate your toe. So I decide I'm going to do it while I'm down there. It's a little slower. I'm like, I'm going to do it now. So I do that. And then I get this crazy idea that I'm going to add a bathroom to my house. And it's outside, but it's covered and it's all concrete. So I'm out there in my boot right after I have my toe amputated and I'm cutting concrete. And I'm like working hard and I'm in pain and I'm thinking this is not fun. So I called Jamie up and he's like, yeah, I'll come down for a week or 2 and help you out. So he came down and this is just 2 years ago. And he starts talking to me about this roofing thing that he kind of does on the side. He had his own construction company and, he thought there's some opportunity. And then he also mentioned he'd like to come back to work for me full time with maybe some of my warehouses or something else that I was doing. So we started talking and kicking around ideas, and he actually came back to work for me full time, and we hadn't started anything with roofing. And, we had some meetings, sat down, talked to some other people, trying to find out if there's a need, what the opportunities are. And, I got excited about it after a few months of really digging into it. And, I went down to a deal in Miami, met a guy that has a roofing business in Dallas, Fort Worth area. And, he was talking about, been doing that for 15 years and was having a hard time breaking 15 million in revenue and then, getting around the right people to help him. He broke 25 million in revenue. And I was looking at that thinking, man, here's a guy I just met that I think could also be a mentor in a business that I'm thinking about doing. And so like you mentioned mentors can come from all different directions.
That's true.
And, it might be a mentor about a specific industry. It might be a mentor about a mindset shift that's needed. It could be mentors.
Well, family,
Yeah.
health. Yeah.
So many different areas. So anyways, that's how it all started. Jamie is the one that had this idea, and I was a little bit on the slow end of saying, yeah, let's do it. And, you know, as we've unpacked that, gone through tons of training, brought on a lot of really good people. That's the thing too with this business. So we've hired, you know, people out of Airmark for 22 years, Hy-Vee out of 27 years, you know, people that have been in jobs that have been there for decades. And we're saying, look, man, we're going to build this thing. This is what we've done last year. This is what we're going to do this year. And it goes back to what you're talking about. People that are complaining about can't find good people. It's because they're not selling themselves and their vision and their business well. You know, if you can get excited about what you're doing and you can talk about where you're going to go and how they can be a part of that, they get excited and they're going to come on board and they're going to help make it happen.
You know, one thing I just learned, you know, I think we talked briefly last week as I just did a career change here the last week or two ago. But like someone came to me, you know, I wasn't looking for a job and they came to me. And to me, that makes me think too, like so many of these people out here, if you are looking for great people, keep an eye out for them. And when you see one, go after them. I mean, if you truly believe this is someone that can help take us to the next level, or you look like, you know, you were talking about getting yourself basically working with an exit plan always in mind. Yeah. I mean, when you see someone that, you know what, this is the person that could get me, they could totally do what I'm doing right here, probably do it better and be able to take it. And then I can free up myself or whatever. If you're sitting there at work and going, man, we just can't find anyone. Well, it's because you're looking at all the people that are coming to you, you know? I mean, start looking and keep your eyes open. Be out to eat and see that server that you see consistently that just seems to kick ass and take names and have a great attitude no matter what. That might be your person, you know? But yeah, like what a great idea, you know, being able to just go and pitch, hey, this is what we're doing. And I really believe someone like you, you know, come join us. And for someone to leave something that they've been at for centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, you think that was an easy decision for any of them? Probably not.
No.
And there might be something that people might be benefited to learn how that works. Because, I mean, a lot of people be like, oh, I don't approach this person. They already have a job. How can you approach someone that have a job for 20 years and you respectfully approach the person?
Yeah,
How
so
do you
like
do that?
one of the guys, he actually owns his own business. And I called him up and said, man, I said, I've got a position right now that I think you'd be perfect for. I said, you know, you've got the ability, you've got the knowledge that's needed for this. You've got the organization skills in the office that's needed for this. This job's going to be so much easier than what you're doing now as far as the physical aspect of it. You know, when I see this job, your face comes to mind. Like, this is for you. Like, you're meant for this. And then try to set up a meeting. You know, that's how that conversation went. And then, you know, a week later we sat down and talked, and a week later, you know, people are on board. And that's really it. Just like what you're saying about finding somebody that's doing something well and you're impressed with them. I mean, you don't know how many times I've done that. I mean, at Menards, I'm like, you know, most of these guys are not looking to help you. And you get somebody that's like, you know, they're like knocking on your window. Hey, you need any help? Hey, can I help you? Can I do this? And I'm just like, where did you come from? Like, you haven't been here long, have you? And you know, that guy, I got his name and number, and you know, I've talked to him about a job possibility. I do that all the time. I'm constantly looking at people saying, you know, especially when they're in a bad situation. You know, you see somebody handle something well that was just a terrible situation, and that stands out too.
Right. That's true.
So do you believe that for you to succeed in anything, the number one thing or the very first step is to meet people that have went through that path? It could be like any type of industry, for example, roofing. You need to know someone that it's in that industry. Real estate, something, health, to lose weight. You need to meet someone or learn from someone that can help you. If you think having that mentor in all areas of your life is what brings you.
Yes and no. If we all have that mindset, there would be nothing new that ever gets created.
Yeah.
So like, yes and no. If you're wired in a way that's going to figure it out and you're going to make it happen no matter what, then you don't need that as much. You may go about it a hard way. It might take you longer. It might, but you also may create something that doesn't exist. So like that, I can see going either way. I think the majority of people need somebody to show them the way. Just point me in the right direction, help me, hold my hand. But then there's other people out there that are wired different. And, they're going to say, here's a problem. I'm going to create something. I'm going to figure it out. And that's how all these inventions happen all the time. And watch Shark Tank, man. That's a cool show to watch.
It is. Well, and a lot of ideas end up being like a failed idea from another attempt.
Right.
Just like medications and stuff like that. You're like, we made this for diabetes. It sucked, but it really works for obesity or whatever. It's
or
like
success.
You find that out.
Like the bicycle. Bicycle's been around forever, and then there's training wheels that go on a bike, right? Well, here a few years ago, somebody took the pedals off of a bike and they're selling those things like crazy. So now you got a bike with no pedals, and that's the new training bike, and it works way better. Kids don't have to they don't have to pedal and hold their balance. All they got to do is go down a slight hill and hold their balance, and they're working on one thing, not two
and
things.
they learn so fast.
So there's a perfect example of something that already worked, already sold millions of them all over the world. And somebody took that idea and made it better.
And speaking of that, I mean, even I'm always buying like a new adaptation to my bike. Like you got a cup holder, and now you got like your phone holder. There's always these things that someone is thinking like, oh, we don't have this. And that's where like Shark Tank comes in. You identify a problem and how you can make it easier for humans, and it should sell, no problem.
Yeah, like business 101 is you find a need and you fill it. Like that's business 101. You find a need and you fill it. It could be with an individual, like a person, or it could be with a company. There's needs all the time.
Right. I always think like I find myself when I'm bored or whatever, just try to think of like, all right, what is something that just seems to irritate or piss me off? And and try to come up with those types of things, or like what is something all of us struggle. I haven't come up with one, that's why I'm still here doing this stuff, but until I do.
Look up the number one complaint in any industry. I was bored one night and I was like, I'm going to look on the Better Bureau Business to see what is the number one industry that has the most complaints. And it was roofing.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how you started.
Right.
The quality roof.
But no, that's a good idea though. That's a really good idea. Yeah.
So do you think what's next now? I mean, in every successful businessman, everybody says, oh, I'm not doing this for money anymore. So what would be the main reason why you keep going? And why do you see yourself successful, but you also see a lot of people that would be below you that don't work hard as you?
Okay, so that's a good question. Several things still drive me. One being, people that work for me. I want to see them do well. I want to see them succeed. I want to see them make more money. There's goals that I have for people that work for me that I say I want to see them at this income next year. Like I think that way. There used to be a time when I was thinking that, man, I want to have somebody that works for me that we would be able to pay them $100,000 a year because they bring that kind of value to the business. But I got to be in a business that can offer that. Not all industries are going to offer that. And so that was a thought a while ago. The other thing is generosity. So back 27 years ago, I first got married. I remember having a plan. I wanted to make $30,000 a year, and I wanted to save up $300,000 a year, and I could make 10% interest off of that, and any S&P or any mutual fund that was worth investing in, and that would pay me the $30,000 a year when I retire. So like I was thinking that way from like a young age, 19. I'm thinking how can I create enough wealth so I don't have to work anymore, where my money's going to work harder for me than what I'm working, and here in the last several years, my wife and I have been in a place where we've been able to give way more than $30,000 a year to, things that we find value in, things that we look at and we're like, man, that needs to change. We're going to put some money toward that. My wife and I went to the movie just recently, I couldn't even tell you the name of it. She's the one that wanted to go to it, and it broke our hearts. It's talking about sex trafficking with kids, and we walk out of that. My wife's saying, I want to go get a job, full-time job, and just put all the money that I can toward that. And I'm like, yeah, but we can make more money in these other areas. And I'm on board with her. It's like, how can we make a difference? How can we help? So like, I think at some point in time, you start thinking differently about making money and how, I'm going to be able to buy this. I'm going to be able to do that. I'm going to be able to do this. And it's going to offer me freedom here. And you start thinking about, how can I make an impact in the people around me, or even the people I don't know that are just in a bad spot. So that drives me. And I would say with that, there's never an end, whether it's
how many people can impact. There's a lot of people in the world.
Yeah. Well, and even with how long am I going to work until, when am I going to retire? When am if an opportunity is in front of me and it can do this and it can help these people, like, why wouldn't I want to do that? Right. Even if I am 60 or 70 or 80, like I don't see that changing.
Yeah, I don't think it will. You'll probably just be someone that always has your hand in something, as long as you're capable and able. And the older and more comfortable, if you will, you get, the more you can pick and choose, on those, and what you find important and what fits where you're going. So
now, last question: do you think about educating people, launch a online course on how to start in real estate?
No, never have thought about that. I hate getting in front of people and talking.
Yeah.
Even doing this right now, it's like, yeah, this is not going to be fun. Yeah. I don't like to get in front of people and talk. So no, I've never thought about that.
Do you have an idea of how many people would like to learn from you?
Sorry, you do like going to those?
Yeah.
Right. Because I believe we went to one maybe 5 or 6 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember. It's a long time ago, but we went to one up in Chicago, But yeah, I mean, that type of stuff, that's one thing I do think a lot of people, no matter where you're at, whether it's 30, 50, 70 years old, if you get it, you really never want to stop learning. You're always looking for ways to even improve individually, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Jason, we do appreciate you coming in here. We appreciate Quality Roofing Pros' support here with the Talk About It podcast on top of that. But we really do appreciate you coming and just kind of sharing your journey, your knowledge, and just sitting down, having a good quality conversation with Victor and myself. I know Victor may not ever tell you, but I know he speaks a world of you, and he's greatly appreciative for what the time and energy you've committed to him.
For sure.
He shared that with me. So
yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Jason Robbins with Quality Roofing Pros, all around entrepreneur. What did you say, the very first word on that?
Serial entrepreneur.
Serial entrepreneur. I like that. But yeah, we appreciate you coming in. It's a Talk About It podcast. Victor Dantas, I'm Lauren Fulmer, and hit subscribe.
See you guys next week.
We'll see you next week. Thank you for watching this episode of the Talk About It podcast.
I'm Victor Dantas.
I'm Lauren Fulmer.
And we would encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the bell. It's going to be right below the video. So
hit the bell.
So you know when the next episode is up.
We appreciate all the support.
Thank you.